Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. So, haven't done a video for a little bit, and I do apologize. I'm working on getting way more of them done. It's just, you know how life goes sometimes. So today we're going to take a look at, I don't know if this is like a controversial feature of DJ controllers and mixers, but it's something I don't see used very much, and it's something I think should be used a lot. So let's take a look here. I've got a couple things set up here, and we're going to take a look at, as you probably already saw from the video title, we're going to look at the booth output. This is a feature most controllers have. I would say probably 95% of all controllers, except for maybe some of the real small ones maybe. 95% of controllers and like bigger DJ mixers, we'll look at my X1800 mixer here in a second, and we're going to look to see what the booth output looks like and how we should use it as DJs. So let's take a look. Alright, so in front of me here we have my Numark NV. Haven't had this guy out for a little while. Straps in the way. This is just an example of I guess you would say a normal, regular DJ controller. You know, nothing fancy, just your good old-fashioned, well, if it'll focus, there we go, good old-fashioned DJ controller. So let's take a look at the back of it here, because that's where we're going to want to see what's going on here. I have a speaker set up here. Let's walk around. Don't mind my mess. On the back here, we have a couple different outputs. We have our standard balanced output right here, which is what we're going to run to our mains, just like we always do. But if you look over here, we have two outputs over here. We have a master RCA and a booth RCA. All right, so between those two, we have, you know, three different outputs actually on this thing. We have an RCA for our master output, a XLR for our master, and then we have that RCA for our booth. So what is the booth output? So the booth output is a secondary output of whatever is heading out of the main output on the mixer. So to put this in a little bit of perspective, you have a main out and a booth out. Those two sources are going to provide the same signal. So whatever is coming out of my master is also coming out of my booth. But the difference is they have two volume levels that are completely independent. All right, so if we look at the top of the mixer here, we can see I have a master knob here, master gain knob, and then a booth gain knob. So like I said, these are two outputs of the same signal. So whatever is heading out of like my master here, whatever's coming out of the master is also replicated on the booth output. But the difference is this has its own volume control. So you're going to ask, like, what purpose does this secondary output serve? I mean, it's doing the same signal as the first one. Well, what's important to remember there is this gives you the, getting the light here, it helps. This gives you the ability to run your own booth monitor beside you. So I'm going to put a couple pictures up on the screen here. Here's a couple setups that I've done in the past for wedding DJs, for wedding DJing. And one of the things about these is you'll notice the speakers aren't going to be right beside me. The speakers are placed somewhere else in the room. They're not beside me. Maybe they're a little bit farther away, or maybe they're just in a place where I can't really hear them that well. So one of the things is it's kind of tough to mix if you're going to be mixing, you know, all the time whenever you're playing. It's really hard to mix if you can't hear what's going on coming out of the speakers. So that's where the booth comes into play. So what you can do is you can take a small speaker like one of these. This is just a Behringer, I think it's a B210D, something like that. It's just a Behringer speaker, and this thing has your standard inputs, nothing fancy, but it's just a basic powered speaker. Nothing too fancy. This is what we're just going to use as an example today. So what I would do is I would have my normal main PA, and then I would have my booth speaker, this little guy right here, I would set him up right beside me. So just like down on the floor, like right beside me, you know, nothing too extravagant. But I would take him, put him down beside me, and I would wire that to the booth output on my mixer. That way, I can take my master and I can set it for the room. You know, I can take my normal PA, set it up as I always do, and then if I can't hear it, I mean, that could be a problem if I'm trying to mix, you know. So I'll get my PA set up, get it set how it needs to be, get the volume level for it, and then leave my master alone from then on. And then I'll take my booth output, run it to this little powered speaker, and then I have the ability to control what I hear with that booth output volume knob. If somebody comes up to talk to me, I can just real quick reach up here, reach up to this knob, grab a hold of it, and then I can set my volume for whatever I'm doing right now. So if somebody comes up, I can just crank that down real quick. I don't have to touch my master. Everybody else on the dance floor can hear what's going on. And then when they leave, after the request or whatever, I can turn it back up so I can listen to what I was doing. And that's a huge thing. I mean, that gives me the ability to actually mix and hear what's going on while my PA may be in another spot of the room. So let me show you how I hook this up real quick, and maybe this is something that you need to start doing. Alright, so put the camera back up on the tripod here because I can't hold the thing to save my life, I guess. But what I have here is focus, there we go, is a pretty basic cable here. This is an RCA to XLR. Make sure you get the right gender here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cable, I'm going to plug it into my booth output here. So just an RCA, and now I have an XLR that I can take and plug into my speaker, which I'm going to do right here. So I just have a simple cable hooked right up to from my booth output right to my speaker. Turn this guy on, and then I'll give you a quick example of what this is like here. So, like I said, so I'm playing a song right now. I don't know what the song this is, it's just a song I picked randomly. My master here, you can see it's coming out, so my master actually has output to it. So I can take and I can adjust my room however it needs to sound. I'm going to lower the gain on the speaker because I forgot I had it cranked. So now, like I said, my room sounds good, everything sounds great. Now I can take this one and I can bring it up. So now I can actually hear, what I'm mixing and stuff like that. And like I said, it follows whatever I'm doing here. So if I take this and sweep it down or use the fader, so I can hear exactly what I'm doing on the mixer all the time out of this booth. Now, this is still completely separate of my cue here, so like if I'm listening to my cue output on this thing with my headphones, it's still separate of that. This is still its own thing. This is just a secondary volume output for what's going out of the master. Okay, so that was a quick example with a basic controller. Probably what most of you guys have. So let's flop over here, we'll switch over, we'll take a look at my Denon X1800 and see how that one is set up, because it's set up just a little bit differently. But the principle is still the same. Okay, so I have here in front of me right now is my Denon X1800. This operates on the exact same principle as the other mixer, except the cables are just a little bit different. So let me grab the camera here. So on the front of this, we have our master output, just like always. This is our main master. This is what I use to set up the volume in the room. And then down on here, we have our booth output. This is a completely separate output. I can adjust the volume here. It's a completely separate output as this. But as always, anything I'm doing here is still going to be going through this booth output. So I will be able to hear whatever I'm doing here on this separate output. So let's take a look at the back. So taking a look at the back of the X1800, we're going to see we have our main master balanced outputs. That's the XLRs that I hook up that go right to my PA. We also have an unbalanced output here as well, so RCA for our master. Have a record output, but that's just chained off of this one. It's just a separate one to keep isolation. And then we have a booth output here. Now you notice these are TRS. These are 1/4 inch jacks. So here is a quick example of the type of cord I would use for that. So this side we have our TRS cable. Notice the 2 rings, tip ring shield. They go to our XLRs. These XLRs are just standard XLRs, nothing fancy at all. So these are the kind of cables that I would use. I would plug these cables into the back of the X1800, into those slots, and then plug these into my monitors. Now luckily, being XLR like this, if they're not long enough, now these are decently long, I think they're like 15-20 feet, something like that. If they're not long enough, you can just chain another XLR on it and go over to your monitor speakers just fine. So even if you can't reach it, you can get the smaller adapters that are like 1 foot, 2 foot, something like that. I have these work great. These are long enough for what I'm doing. But do make sure that you get the TRS cables. Make sure you get the ones with the 2 rings, because if you don't, you are most likely going to get some hum coming out of this. This is a balanced cord here. That means you have your waveform come to the first 2 and you have a shield here as well. that uses a differential amplifier on the other side to keep noise out. If you don't use TRS, you're going to get some noise and some buzz in there, which I can actually hear if I use that RCA to XLR, since it's not balanced. It's only got 2 conductors in the whole thing, so it's not balanced, so I end up getting some buzz on that cable when I use the RCA. But it's not bad. It's not horrible. It's negligible. I mean, the buzz is not bad enough that I can't hear it, because like, you're in a loud room, it's a monitor speaker. It's nothing too fancy. But if you can, get the right ones. This is a balanced cable to balanced, which is what XLR are. Keep your signal nice and clean. Alright guys, I hope that was informative. I mean, I see a lot of DJs out there that don't use their booth outputs, then have a monitor. I've seen a lot of guys chain a monitor off of a main speaker, which is almost always a no-no, because then you can't control the volume that's right there beside you. So if you have somebody coming up and taking a request or something like that, you can't just real quick, reach to your mixer, turn the knob down, and be able to hear what they're saying, you know what I mean? So if you can, I would say most mixers have a booth output. So if you have a booth output, you should use it. It costs you, what, 1 extra cable if you're going to run a monitor anyway. So you just hook that up to your booth output, you have control then. And that's so nice to be able to, as a DJ, leave your master alone, let the PA up front sound like it needs to sound, and then grab your booth output here and control what you hear to your ears, so then you can mix a whole lot better. You can hear what's going on. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate you checking out this video. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, so I appreciate everybody out there who's subscribed. It really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed, you should consider subscribing. I don't post that often. I'm going to start posting more. I think everybody says that, but I'm going to try to start posting some more. I got some cool video ideas and stuff like that. We're going to go through some of the new stuff that Denon has out. We're going to go through using some of our older equipment in a new way. We're going to go over subwoofers, how to place subwoofers, things like that. A bunch of cool stuff. We're going to talk about how to make your experience better as a DJ. So thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.